start my talk, I've just got to comment on this talk because it's quite extraordinary and it absolutely fits this gathering, because you know, in a way, the birth of this gathering was Alfred Watkins' book, The Old Straight Track. And the book begins with the fact that there are all these mounds all over the countryside. And he starts off the book, if you remember, saying, isn't it odd that there are all these mounds? And then the book carries on. And when I moved to Lewes 25 years ago, one of the striking things about it is there's a mound, which we call the Tump, or the Mound, just down the road from us. And I ended up writing a book about it, sort of starting on a journey from that mound and going off to the Long Man of Wilmington and back, with the Druid Way. And I've done a bit of research into the mound there. And so all my neurons were firing away there when you were talking, because there are these extraordinary links. And I think really we are bloodhounds and weavers. Bloodhound, this is just a fancy way of saying sort of scientists and artists. There's two sides of it. Bloodhounds were sniffing out. So as I was listening to you, Susan, I'm saying, oh my God, and that, I wonder what that means. Isn't that strange? What an interesting coincidence. And that's the bloodhound part of us, the scientist tracking it. But at some other level, they're weaving together these pieces of information that, frustratingly, we don't know all the answers to. They weave together as some kind of tapestry that makes us who we are as people living here, as human beings on the earth. And that's the magic in it. I think the fact that we can't fully understand it, rather than being annoyed by that, as I often am, I think the trick is to be filled with awe and wonder. Just as when you read a poem, you don't quite get it all. It's marvellous because everything isn't fully explained. So that's how I approach it. So, for instance, I was thinking, you were drawing this connection between mounds and places of learning and government and monarchy and all the rest of it. I thought, well, this is funny because Lewes is a place actually originally of 7 mounds that were all aligned in a particular way. 5 of them have been removed. You said lots of mounds have gone, and that's true. And just about 10 years ago, somebody doing research in the parish records was able to piece that information together by finding out references to mounds being removed to put a house up on. There are 2 left. And the mound is by a salt pan, the dripping pan. So there's this salt connection. So you think, that's funny. And then you think, what about a connection with monarchy? Well, of course, Lewes plays a huge part in the history of Britain, because it was there that there was the Battle of Lewes, where the barons got fed up with the king, and they said, we want a right in the government. We want to be able to parley. And so the first part, so the king was captured, and then he said, okay, you can have a parliament. So Lewes is significant in the story of Britain because it's in the story of democracy and the founding of the first parliament.
And didn't Anne Cleves live there?
And well, she never actually went there. He gave, instead of chopping her head off, he gave her a house in Lewes, but she never apparently actually went there. But it was a huge ecclesiastical place. There was a massive abbey there, and a strong religious stronghold. And with this pre-Christian past, with these 7 mounds, Lewes really means the place of the sacred mounds.
Mystery schools, I expect.
A mystery, yes, almost undoubtedly a sacred place, a mystery school, and connected with the story of our government. And I'm just going to just fire off these sort of connections quickly before I get onto my talk. You talked about Prince Charles. Well, I don't know if you've come across his book Harmony that came out last year. And that's where he really comes out of the closet. And he says, a lot of you thought I'm mad because one minute I'm talking about architecture, the next minute I'm going on about organic agriculture and all the rest of it. But actually I've had a plan all the time. And the plan is this kind of wonderful scheme. And there are chapters on sacred geometry, on spirituality. He really does come out and show his mettle, as it were. And you mentioned, you showed a picture of Marlborough with Merlin's Mound and the way it's in the same proportions as Silbury Hill just down the road. And the mound at Lewes is in exactly the same, it's just smaller, but it's the same angle. I think it's 60 degrees with its flat top. And you think, what is going on? It's very peculiar. This connection with salt, you mentioned the Druid connection with immortality in our Samhain ceremony, which takes place opposite May Day at Beltane, at Samhain, which is around 31 October to the 2nd of November, the Festival of the Dead, where we remember those who've passed on. We have a feast of honey, wine, bread, and salt. So these are some connections. And I didn't know that Westminster had a mound. You know, I used to go to Vincent Square, but I didn't know there was a mound there because it's all flat now. You know, and the sanctuary, I remember that too. So thank you so much. And a part of my past that I had, okay, that's it. So a part of my past that I didn't reject was my grandfather was a friend of Alfred Watkins, and together they started the old the Straight Track Club. And so in pride of place at our home is a little bronze monument of a dolmen that was given to my granddad. And when he was working on the Straight Track Club, they had a wonderful idea, which was, you know, in the old days, maybe they still do it, you know, the hospital notes, which is like an envelope that is printed, and then the doctor takes it from the end of your bed and says, still looks bloody awful, you know, give him some more glucose or whatever, and then he puts it back and everybody makes their notes, and then it gets passed on to the consultant who reads it, and then occasionally it gets muddled up with somebody else's envelope, and then you're in for trouble. Well, they came up with the same idea, and what they did is they had an envelope that was printed on the front. This is so lovely. And you would, if you discovered a lay, if you were out walking and you discovered, oh, there's this, I think I can spot a lay, and you worked it out on the map and all the rest of it, you would write up a report of it, draw a little map and so on, and then you would send it down the tree. You'd have like a telephone tree. You would send it to the next member, who would read your paper, and then would comment in the box. You know, yes, I've noticed this too, and do you know it goes on to Winchester, you know, like that. And then sign it and date it, and then he would mail it to the next member, and the next member, and then a couple of months later it would come back to you as the author with everybody's comments on it. Isn't that lovely? That's a fantastic idea, and I've still got a few of those left as mementos. So, sacred places. What I thought we'd do is we'd do a spot of work. No facts, or very few, but instead a technique. Do you remember reading about hidden masters, adepts and yogis, Tibetan lamas who had mastered the art of astral travel and could visit anywhere on earth at will, without leaving their mountain fastnesses? This was an idea introduced to the West by the Theosophical Society at the end of the 19th century and popularised in the 20th by writers like Lobsang Rampa. Do you remember, who read Lobsang Rampa? Let's have a show of hands. Lobsang Rampa. Not many actually, no, okay. Very strange books. If you pick up a copy now and read it, it's absolutely barking, really. But in, you know, back in the 70s, whenever it was, the 60s, it was all the rage. The idea in this was that simply by entering into a trance, these adepts could leave their bodies like dried husks, like mere shells, that would await their return whilst their inhabitants, the inner soul, would travel in their astral bodies to remote locations, to heal the sick, to transmit teachings to distant disciples, to inspire new inventions or great movements that could help lead the world out of misery. I remember once talking to Olivia Robertson, who died at the age of 96 last November, who founded the Fellowship of Isis. And I helped to run the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids, and we have a distance learning program in Druidry that we mail all over the world. And Olivia, who was a wonderful Anglo-Irish eccentric, she said she has a Druid order as well, Druid Clan of Dharma. And she said, oh, we don't bother with the post. We send our lessons on the astral. Why don't you try that? Much simpler. We still use the old-fashioned method of the post. But, you know, what a wonderful thought it was. I'm sure when you came across this idea that you could sit in a cave and just travel all over the world, this is a tremendous thought. And of course, the trap that we fell into was immediately thinking, well, if I'm going to do that, I've got to do the complete opposite. I've got to drag my husk all the way to Tibet to learn this stuff, which is what we do, of course. We go off to South America and we go off to different places to learn these things. But here we all are. We're not in Tibet. We're sitting in this wonderful place in Addington Park, and I think we've moved into a different era now. We've moved into an era where more and more we're understanding that this work can be done right here, right now, in our hearts and our souls. And that we're in a magical landscape almost wherever we are, which is why this work of uncovering these connections is so important. Because even just at the level of inspiration, when you're sitting in Marlborough having a cup of tea on the way to somewhere, if you know that Merlin's Mound is just up the road, it inspires you and it helps you to see beyond the surface to that deeper mystical level that is always there. So I think we can do this now. Would you be interested in working on a technique right now? Are we up for this? Yes, good. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll divide our time into three sections really, which is an orientation, an actual journey, and then a debriefing. Okay, so it's got to be quick because we've eaten into some of the time already. That is why the old Indian sits upon the earth instead of propping himself up and away from its life-giving forces, says Luther standing there. For him to sit or lie upon the ground is to be able to think more clearly and feel more keenly. The old Lakota know that man's heart away from nature becomes hard. He knew that lack of respect for living things soon led to lack of respect for humans too. All the earth is sacred, but some places undoubtedly have a more invigorating, calming, or uplifting effect on us than others. And over the centuries, many of these places have been recognized in spiritual traditions the world over. They've become places of pilgrimage, and the very act of traveling to them and spending time in them, meditating, praying, and making offerings, is seen as healing and beneficial. The fact that this idea is universal, the fact that you find it all over the world, suggests it resonates at some deep level with the human soul and deep-seated psychological or spiritual needs. So you've got this idea that all over the world there are special places. The whole earth is sacred, but there are also particular places that are not so much more sacred than anywhere else, but just are particularly resonant and powerful and can offer us something in particular. And so, but of course we have to travel to it. So by evoking the idea of a sacred place, you automatically invoke the idea of pilgrimage. You can't have one without the other. So they are two things. So immediately this invokes this primal idea of stillness and movement. It's something that's embedded in everything, in the way life works. The in-breath and the out-breath. The dancer who knows how to move between stillness and movement. And so whenever you think of a sacred place, you also have to think of the idea of making a pilgrimage to it. So what we'll do is we'll make a pilgrimage in consciousness. The fact that this need to make pilgrimage exist is so embedded in our DNA, if you like, is shown in the fact that however revered a spiritual teacher is, if he or she tells you not to make a pilgrimage, you will take no notice of him. Look at this, the Sikh holy text, the Guru Granth Sahib, where the founding father of the Sikh religion says, I do not go to see sacred shrines of pilgrimage or bathe in the sacred waters, because of course India at that time, everybody was making pilgrimages, going to the Ganges, bathing and so on. I do not bother any beings or creatures, a sort of early environmental consciousness really. I'm not going to bother anybody by making these journeys. The Guru has shown me the 68 places of pilgrimage within my own heart, where I now take my cleansing bath. So he's telling his followers, don't go on pilgrimage, it's all in the heart. There are 68 sacred places in the heart. So what did everybody do? They said, this is marvellous, we must make a temple. And so they made the Golden Temple at Amritsar, and they all make pilgrimages there, and they bathe in the big basin in front. You can't stop people doing it. But I think what we can do is we can start to work, like the adepts in Tibet, in the Himalayas, we can start to do more pilgrimages within, in the inner world. So, I'll give you, I can't resist giving you just a little list of pilgrimages. Don't bother about sort of thinking about this, but just so you know that there are actually, somebody's analysed that there are 6 kinds of pilgrimage. There's the devotional pilgrimage, which is for worshipping, honouring, or in Eastern tradition, accumulating merit. There's an instrumental pilgrimage where you go to accomplish finite worldly goals. In other words, you go on a pilgrimage to get cured of a particular illness or in order to achieve a specific objective. There is what's called the normative pilgrimage, which is part of a ritual cycle. So, for instance, a lot of members of our Druid order will make a pilgrimage to Glastonbury every year, and we have a big festivity and a ceremony there. There's the obligatory pilgrimage, which is the Hajj, for instance. If you're a Muslim, you are obliged to go on the Hajj at least once in your lifetime. In Christianity, there was the penance, where if you'd done something particularly horrid, or probably quite minor actually, you were told to go on a pilgrimage. And criminals were sent on the El Camino, you know, the great pilgrimage across Europe down to Santiago de Compostela. Sometimes that was the penance that you had to do. You had to walk the Camino. And then there's the wandering pilgrim, where you specifically leave without a predetermined goal. You can totally surrender to the other, to the spiritual world, and you wander, the wandering pilgrim. And finally, there's the initiatory pilgrimage, where you are going in search of transformation. So those are 6 reasons for going on a pilgrimage. But you go and you arrive at a sacred site, and let's just quickly think why on earth we would want to do that before we set off. Let's be hard-nosed and scientific about it first, and say, well, there's a change is as good, very mundane. A change is as good as a rest. When you go to, I went to Ely Cathedral the other day. I mean, it's just stunning. You can make a visit somewhere. Change is as good as a rest. A sort of spiritually sanctioned holiday. And of course, holiday actually comes as a holy day. So. There might be other physical phenomena going on, like invigorating negative ions at the site, if it's by the sea or a river or a waterfall, or if it's up on a mountain. It's in a forest. We now know scientifically that breathing in forest air is healing. There's fascinating articles about that, where the actual particles given off by the trees, you actually inhale into your lungs and it goes into your bloodstream, which is why in Japan doctors will prescribe forest walking as a remedy for certain illnesses. And just physically walking actually makes you feel better. So taking a journey, again, that might be why the Camino is so popular, because people are actually getting off their butts and actually going for a really good long walk. And then you factor into that the electromagnetic field of the Earth. And that varies across the Earth. We know that scientifically. So in addition to all these quite mundane, if you like, reasons why a pilgrimage might be good, and going to a sacred site might be good, you may be entering a different electromagnetic field, which is more invigorating in some places than others. But then I guess all of us here would like to think that there's something more going on. So let's factor in some more elements. There's the idea that the Earth has energy centres or chakras. And I remember Peter Dawkins taking me on a walk at Hollywood in Ireland and showing this little, and I was kind of sceptical of this idea of Earth chakras. And then there's this little miniature system of 7 chakras at Hollywood in Ireland. It's really quite uncanny, and you can sort of feel them, and the landscape matches them. There's the brow chakra, with great big triangular stone that you climb on top of, and you can sort of feel, you have this tremendous vision and sight, and then behind that is a crown chakra. There's a great mound behind that with a little church on top, and then you go down and so on. So there's this idea of earth chakras. So the idea that certain places are, for instance, heart chakras. People say that Glastonbury is a heart chakra, and if you go there, rather than being confused by all the New Age books on sale. Instead, your heart will feel love and compassion. If you go up to a brow chakra site like Edinburgh, suddenly that'll help with doing your exams. Perhaps nature spirits, devas, fairies, angels, or grumpy demons live in certain places that we should avoid or visit according to our needs. And then there's the idea that holy people have lived at certain sites, and that somehow, because they're holy, because somehow they're in contact with the spiritual world, they've imbued the area with their energy, their vibrations that have somehow remained. So it'll be connected with places where holy people have been born, or where they died, or where they've gained enlightenment, or where they performed miracles, where they performed healings. And it's this idea that these kind of events affect the atmosphere of a place on a permanent basis. And again, you can be skeptical about this, but travel to somewhere like New Zealand, and go down to the South Island, and go down, down on the western side, for instance, places where very, very few people have been. The Maoris were sensible; they didn't bother going that far because it's too damn cold. So very few people have been. And you sit on a beach there, sit on a stone there, and there's this peculiar sensation that there's no recording. There's the tape is almost clean. It's slightly spooky. There's a sort of emptiness which, if you can accept, is wonderful actually, but it's also quite unnerving. And the complete contrast when you fly back to England and you sit almost anywhere in England, and you can just feel the layers of recording of history and events and battles and love and all sorts of things that have happened there. So the suggestion is, in a way, that in a sacred place there's a particular configuration of recordings in the etheric, if you want to use that terminology, that is different, that is particularly magical and wonderful, that can be accessed if you're sufficiently sensitive. And then there's this theory that certain places are good for freeing you of troubles, or even of karma, sort of like cosmic toilets that flush away toxins, that you can dump your troubles there and feel lighter than you were before. Sort of places that somehow are vibrating at such a level that they go whoosh like that and clear you out. Now, that idea, of course, got hijacked with the idea of indulgences that the church sort of got into, where the idea that you could somehow clear yourself of your sins by paying money, which would help the church to build the buildings and the bishop in his palace for his latest furnishings. It's still going on, and if you saw the other day, there's a bishop in Germany who's been hauled up because he spent millions of pounds doing up his personal quarters in Limburg or wherever he was in Germany. So it still goes on. And I was at a Hindu temple near Birmingham, and I was amazed to see a sign up saying that you could clear the karma of a previous life for a £500 donation to help in the building of that. And I rather cheekily asked if I gave 1,000 if I could clear 2 lives. But I think these are sort of distortions, if you like. But I mean, without I don't want to be judgmental, and perhaps it works. But I think in a way that's like a kind of echo of a truth, which is that there are places which, if you give of yourself, if you make a sacrifice of your whatever it is you're holding on to in a particular sacred environment, it will actually clear you. And if you think about the placebo effect that has been so well researched these days, that we know it's a real effect. If you think about what's happening with healing, you've got this particular thing that's been bugging you for a long time, and you go to a place that has this tremendous reputation and atmosphere and is perhaps rather beautiful, and you have to make a journey to it, and you consciously pray or do whatever you need to do, and you feel yourself literally letting go of it. The placebo effect can really work, I think, and then if you believe that there's also a spiritual effect going on, the two together, and you've got a tremendous power in that for real healing, So, the reason why I'm so keen on this technique that I'm going to show you is because I got one of the nicest emails I've ever got in my life when I was living in New Zealand for a while, and it was from a publisher saying, "Will you write a book about sacred places?" And I emailed back saying yes. And then he said, well, just choose 50 of them and give us the list and we'll see what we can do. And so I started working on a book called Sacred Places. And I discovered, to my horror, that there's a shadow side to all this, which is that the pilgrimage has caused a massive problem, a huge problem in the world. A huge ecological footprint that the year 2000, 70 million people travelled to the Kumbh Mela. 6 million people travelled to Jerusalem. 2 million people went to the Mecca in the Hajj. I mean, in Mecca they have the biggest slaughterhouse in the world, because you have to sacrifice a sheep. So thousands of animals are sacrificed. Thousands and thousands of frozen bottles of water are produced, the biggest cold water bottling factory in the world. 44, ever since a bunch of tents caught fire and killed some people way back, they've built 44,000 permanent tents with air conditioning in the desert for the Hajj and so on. So huge conventional religious pilgrimage creates huge ecological damage. If you factor in New Age pilgrimage as well, that just adds to the load. Now, I'm not saying that one shouldn't go on pilgrimage, not being a wet blanket in that respect, because I think when you really are moved to make a physical journey to a place, I think it's important to follow your spirit. However, I do know that there are some people who just sort of like do a pilgrimage every year to a different place and they're flying all over the world. And, you know, maybe instead if we learnt to pilgrimage internally in the other world, perhaps this could be of some value. So what I'm really advocating is armchair travel. And I think as well that the technological world and the things that we experience in our modern world, there's a parallel with the spiritual world. Can I have a hands up for how many people have used Google Earth? Not as many as I thought. Okay, well that's interesting. That's only about a third of the people here. That's interesting. It's really rather extraordinary if you ever get the chance to use it. You can download it onto any computer. And some images are clearer than others, but for instance, you can go to, say, the mouth of the Brahmaputra River, it flows down into Bangladesh. And you can set the angle of your vision to fly, so you're flying like a plane. And then you can fly to Lhasa, fly up the river, and you fly, it's just quite extraordinary. You fly up the river and get to Lhasa and you fly onto the Tibetan plateau and then fly around the back of the Potala Palace like that and see the Dalai Lama's secret temple, was a secret temple in the lake behind, and then fly back again. Fly over the Cernabus giant, for instance, because you'll get a view of the Cernabus giant that you can't get unless you sort of hire a light plane or something like that. It's really quite a remarkable tool for getting a feeling for this wonderful, miraculous earth that we live in. So those of you who've done this will be familiar with this exercise in a way, because it helps. If you've done it, you'll know what I mean when you do it. Here's what we're going to do. Orientation. When you become, very simple technique. If you like it and you want to do it more often, you can try taking off and just seeing where you land. But to begin with, we're going to select a destination, just so we don't have people sort of landing in Astor, for instance, sort of missing the thing and ending up and things like that. You know, when you've got used to it a bit, try flying without a destination and see what happens if you like. And so choose now a place that you will find uplifting and inspiring. Just think of a place that perhaps somewhere that you've always wanted to visit, but either have or have never got round to. Let's just close your eyes and go inside and just think, okay, I'm going to make a little trip in my imagination in the other world, if you want. Where shall I go? So intention is everything in this work. So make it clear to your mind that you're planning to make a visit to a sacred site in the inner world with the intention of finding peace, healing, and inspiration. You remember you may have heard about remote viewing, which the CIA and the KGB did, and they got so skilled in it they could use just map coordinates in the end to get there. But I guess we're not as skilled as that now. So just work out where you want to go, and what we're going to do is we're going to make a brief visit, and then we'll debrief at the end, and then we'll have a little question and answer session. Okay? So. And I'm going to introduce this technique to you now in a way that for some people will work immediately, particularly if you've had experience with meditation, visualization, or shamanic journeying. But it'll also depend on if it's a propitious time for you. Sometimes these things just don't work, it's not the right moment for you, and that's fine too, but at least you will have heard it. So don't try hard with this, just relax and see how it goes. And it'll just give you a feel for this. So the technique we're going to use is the tried and tested one of meditation in the form of a guided visualization combined with deep relaxation. Just a short one, just 10 minutes or so. Hypnosis uses similar techniques, but in this exercise you are not being hypnotized. You're fully in control of the experience. It's your plane you're flying in, but on this particular flight you've got a pilot sitting next to you who's showing you how to do it. So this time you can just let go and experience the journey. Next time you can try doing it all on your own. First, the safety announcement. There's no need to fasten your seatbelt. The radiance of your soul will act as your guide and will keep you safe. Each of us also has guardians and guides on the inner planes who keep us safe, and you will experience this journey to exactly the right depth of intensity for you at this time in your life. And as I talk you through the visualization, if you can't see anything or find it hard to sense or imagine images, just sense they're there, trust they're there, and just follow the sound of my voice and the journey it takes you on, and you'll get there. You're making this journey to learn more about life in this beautiful world you live in, perhaps to be of service to the world and also for the sheer pleasure of being able to do this. This ability to soar, to travel in time and space, is an inherent ability of your consciousness that is your divine inheritance, that you have always had and may have simply forgotten how to use with precision and full awareness, although you've probably experienced it sometimes or often in your dreams. Now you're reclaiming that ability and that right to do this in full awareness. And so, knowing that you can return to a full awareness of your physical surroundings at any time, just allow yourself to completely relax now. Sense your eyes and all the muscles around your eyes relaxing. Just all over your head and around your mouth. Just letting go. So you just feel all those little muscles around your eyes and around your mouth, just letting go, just relaxing all around your scalp, just completely relaxing. And just move your awareness to your breathing, breathing in and out. And with every breath, you become more deeply relaxed. And feel yourself seated in the chair now. Just become very conscious of your body in the chair. You can feel your bottom on the chair, your legs. And just imagine it's really comfortable now. It's a really comfortable chair that you're seated in. And your awareness of this room and the other people around you just begins to fade so that you're on your own in this chair, in a really comfortable room, perhaps an old library, and there's an old-fashioned globe in front of you, just a few feet away. One of those wonderful old-fashioned globes. And it's just slowly turning. You can see its wooden arm, the colours of the countries and the oceans as it slowly turns. And just sense the arm of the globe melting away. And the globe actually becomes an image of the earth that you're looking at. Watching it turn slowly on its axis as if you are far out in space, gazing down on the planet. So beautiful with the sea and the land beneath you, and just relax and allow yourself to slowly move towards the earth until you feel you're at just the right distance, gazing down onto the planet, so you can admire its beauty. And perhaps you can sense too filaments of light that connect certain points on the planet. A great network or web of energy connecting every sacred site. And slowly the planet turns until you can see the country you want to visit far below you. And sense yourself zooming in now, slowly coming down and down towards the earth and towards the place you have decided to visit. And you're doing this effortlessly, just you're gently coming into land. You come into land a little bit away from it, just a little bit outside of the sacred site. Don't try to worry about seeing anything, just sense yourself coming to land. Just land on the earth and sense yourself touching the ground with the palms of your hand. Just focus all your awareness on the palms of your hand, just feeling the earth beneath you, sensing its energy flowing up into you. Because you're traveling in the world of the etheric or the spirit world or the other world or the astral, it's a world of light and colour and energy. So see, as you have your hands on the earth, just see if you can sense the energy of this place. Sense the pulse of the earth here. And now ask if you can go to the first gateway to this sacred site. And if it's meant to be, you will sense yourself just traveling there effortlessly to this first gateway. And sometimes you might experience this as a guardian standing at a gateway, just standing there, who you need to greet and request entry from. Sometimes you simply need to acknowledge your awareness of the threshold and then step over it if this feels right. And if the guardian allows you, or if it feels right for you to step over the threshold and to move closer in, you go deeper. Deeper towards the heart of this place and all that it offers. Sacred places are places of power that mediate specific frequencies of energy that are inspiring and healing. They are like pure springs high on the mountainside that invigorate and refresh you. So just allow yourself, if it feels right, to bathe in the energy at the heart of this place, soaking in the peace and the power to be found there. And you just feel the energy flowing through you, cleansing you, freeing you, healing you. Sacred places are also places of inspiration that can bring fresh ideas or guidance when we need it. This can come in the form of a message in words, in an image or symbol, or in a gift that is placed in your hands. If this place has a message for you in your life at this moment, be open now to receiving that message. And it's time to leave now, knowing that you can return at any time. It's customary in holy places to make an offering, perhaps lighting a candle or leaving a flower or offering of food on an altar. If this feels right, sense yourself making such an offering, even if it's simply touching the ground with love and reverence. And then make your way to the gateway. Thank the guardian if one is there. Turn in towards the place that you've just been in. Bow in appreciation and thanks. And then turn outwards and move away. Walk away and gradually start drifting up into the air. Sense yourself just floating up into the air until you're looking down on the earth once again from high up. You can see the earth below you. You can see the planet in all its beauty, slowly turning. And it slowly turns until you can see the familiar coastline of England. You're looking down on Kent. And you gradually move and drift down until you can see your position on the physical plane. Here in this room, you find yourself coming down to Addington, the pond outside, the lawn. You sense yourself coming back down to the chair. You sense the globe, the old-fashioned globe with its wooden arm turning. Your awareness of the globe begins to fade, and you become aware of being seated in this room. You sense the walls around you, the ceiling above, the floor beneath you. You sense the presence of your friends and fellow participants around you, and feeling fully present here and now, feeling calm, invigorated, relaxed and alert. You stretch your fingers and toes, and when you feel ready, you open your eyes. And so, in order to help us come back fully to earth, and it's very easy to quickly forget little details of this, just turn to the person who's beside you and just tell them what happened to you, if anything. Just briefly.
I mean, can I have a show of hands? How many people did it work for? So, yeah, so that's sort of 70% or something like that. I mean, when none of these kind of exercises can work for everyone, and particularly after lunch when we're feeling a bit dozy, one can just go off. And sometimes it takes a bit of practice. But what I hope it's shown for those of you certainly when it worked is that it's no big deal. It's a simple technique. If you've done Google Earth, it'll be familiar to you, that wonderful image. Basically with Google Earth, you type in that you want to go to Stonehenge, and you're looking down on the planet from above, and it's just zillions of satellite photos that they put together of the planet. And you press Stonehenge or wherever, Zimbabwe or something, and the planet turns and you go through, and you go in, and then you're there, and then you can land, and you can actually look at it from, and some of them they built up in kind of 3D, and you can actually see them. Others it's kind of squashed strangely. And you can actually, there's also, if you combine that with the 360-degree high-resolution images that UNESCO are doing, World Heritage Sites. Say, the Potala Palace. You can go to the Potala Palace. You can fly in, and it really is. I mean, do try it if you get a chance. It's extraordinary, and the resolution is really good. Fly into the Potala from the Bay of Bengal on Google Earth. Fly around it, and then switch to a normal web browser and go into the World Heritage Site 360-degree panoramas, and you can explore the Potala Palace, where there are crystal clear, taking bright sunshine images from the Potala, and you just move your mouse around, and it's like you're standing on the roof of the Potala Palace, and you're just seeing. And those of you who've travelled will know, it's not always like this, but sometimes you go to these places, and when you're there's hundreds of tourists. You've got a headache. The guide is telling you to hurry up, and actually, it can be stressful. So although this technique is very simple, this is the work of the hidden adept. This is the work of the people we read about in sitting in their caves in the Himalayas. You can do this, and you can keep a journal, and you can make visits, and you can explore things. Maybe when you go there physically, you can then match up your experience with what you experience physically and stuff. Maybe you will meet other beings there who will be able to teach you. Maybe you will visit these places in your dreams as well. So maybe we've sort of over time, Lawrence, aren't we? So, I mean, is there time for questions, or would you prefer me to get down?
5 questions.
Or one question. I mean, it may not be 5, but maybe only one, or none even. Any questions?
In journeying, with shamanistic journeying,
Yes.
I was thinking they use other elements.
Like drums.
Drugs
Drugs
or drums.
or drums.
Or
both.
I'm just wondering, if that is a world over, I read about various groups that do things, but is it in every single corner, that kind of
Oh, what, drugs and drums?
Enhancing.
Well, I think, I personally drums don't work for me. And I've met a number of people who say the same thing, that travelling with a drum is just not, and there's some interesting suggestion around brainwave patterns that it's not for everybody. So that's one thing I would say. So and drugs similarly. I mean, I don't think one can recommend them. And what I find about those this kind of technique is it's incredibly simple, and you can just refine it and work with it, and then you can layer into it other technologies, if you like, or other elements. So about the Druid work, of course, and so imagine doing what I've just done, but imagine doing a ceremony first, setting out your sacred circle, building up some power with a ceremony, with a Druid ceremony, and then lying down in the middle of your circle doing it. Now imagine, for instance, layering it even more by having your partner sitting beside you who sends you off, because what happens with these techniques is, of course, when you go too deep, you blank out and you fall asleep, or you just can't remember. It's like there's a sort of ceiling you reach in it, or a depth that you reach, and you can't go any further. Imagine if he's sitting next to you and he's just, what are you seeing now? There'll be a tiny part of your awareness that was just dipping into sleep, but who remains, and you say, and you can keep going. So somebody can help guide you. Very powerful technique. So you can add other elements, and if incense works for you, and so on and so on. So I think you can add to it, certainly.
Yeah, I've meditated in Nepal as well as different sacred places around the world. I seem to have a very good photographic memory of scenery, natural things, like trees, bushes, animals, rivers, and I use those images to go back to.
You mean that
I've had
where you've meditated, as it were?
Yeah.
Yes, that's true. I mean, for instance, Iona is an island that I feel is incredibly it's just a sort of absolutely magical place, and I've done lots of pilgrimages there, and it's a place where, if I'm drifting off to sleep, I can sort of imagine being down in Columbus Bay or something and sort of see it with a kind of crystal clarity and then go there, So yes, you can use, that's a really good technique, I think.
It sort of keeps me on that and that.
Keeps it, yes.
Because I don't
Yeah. Yeah.
Do you find, like, if you go to a place like, Iona, you get a piece of like marble, does that help people to learn that technique, even to give you that focus of place?
Yes, for some reason, it doesn't sort of particularly work for me. But I think that's the thing. I think it's all these things. It's a question of finding out what works with you. So for some people, yes, having a stone from Columbus Bay and sort of holding it with them or sleeping it with under their pillow, it may well help them in their journey. Or it may not. I mean, for me, I'm a sort of insensitive oaf, so it doesn't work for me. But for somebody else, it may well do. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Forming a last question. Maybe we could do a little survey in terms of where people went. Who went to a site in Britain? Okay, great. Who went to Egypt? So 3 people went to Egypt. Who went to India? Nobody went to India. Africa? America? 2 sites. North America? South America. 2 South Americas, 1 North America. 3 South Americas, 1 North America. Asia, anybody? No. So maybe where did you go? Where did you go? Tibet. Oh, great, fantastic. You went to France. Okay, to Brittany?
No, to just north of Saint-Tropez. Very strange and wonderful experience.
Oh, great. Oh, lovely. Yes, fantastic.
I don't know where I went. I didn't go where I wanted to go.
That's interesting. You went somewhere. You didn't go where you wanted to go. You went somewhere. Who ended up somewhere different to where they planned? Okay, that's interesting. Yes, about half a dozen people. Interesting. So lots of work to do. Whole research projects you could build onto this. Okay, thank you.